Hi guys, good evening. If you didn't get a chance to hear the video, it's actually pretty humorous. You're watching YouTube at home one day, look for a video called A Day in the Life of a Financial Advisor. And I put it up here actually partly as entertainment value, but also to illustrate a point that I'll circle back to in just a moment. And that relates to the Department of Labor's fiduciary ruling. How many people have heard of this and are familiar with the Department of Labor fiduciary rule? I thought so. A handful of people. And most of the people actually that are in the industry. So guys, this is an important thing that is coming down the pike that will dramatically change everything that we do as an advisor and client relationship. The rule applies the fiduciary standard to all retail investment professionals. What that means is that all retail investment professionals, such as ourselves, insurance agents and so on, will be required to uphold the fiduciary standard, which says that we are required to act in the best interests of our clients. Really? That's a thing now? We believe that most advisors have always acted in the best interests of their clients. And while there may have been a few bad apples or a few examples out there where that's not the case, we believe that existing regulations and rules would cover those situations if only they were enforced and handled properly. So we really think, that in our office in particular, our growth and our longevity is a testament to that we have provided and acted in the best interests of our clients. And so really the real change from our perspective of the fiduciary ruling is two things. And the first is that we will no longer be able to receive income directly from the investment companies that we work with. And yes, we do receive some income from the companies we work with in the form of service fees that are deducted from the investments that you hold. Are there less expensive investments out there? Yes, there are. And for a lot of people, they choose to go that path. Vanguard is a great example, but Vanguard is a no-help operation. And if you call asking for advice, you're dialing on an 800 number and you're talking to a different person every time who doesn't know you and doesn't know your situation. So we believe that obviously by the fact that you are in this room tonight, that you have chosen that there is a value in an advisory relationship that you are willing to have an expense for. And for those people who wish to go a different path, and many people in this room actually have Vanguard accounts right next to the accounts that they have from our office, and that's just fine. But for those people who are willing to pay a little bit to find quality, and we do believe that cost and expense is a function of quality, well then we can encounter investments like the one that is run by our good friend Will Danoff at Fidelity Contra Fund that has delivered twice the result of the S&P 500 since 1991. So we believe that there are quality investments out there, and part of our job is to find them. Expenses, we believe, are only a problem, really, in the absence of value. And we believe there is some value out there. And obviously, the people in this room have felt that they value an advisory relationship, and we thank you for that. We appreciate your business. The second big change that we think is going to come as a part of the fiduciary rule, and this is the bigger problem, is defining and documenting the term best interests. In whose opinion is a piece of advice that we give to a client in that client's best interests? Well, with the government, or with the fiduciary rule, it's going to be the government that determines it's in your best interests or not. And really the problem is the regulatory burden and the compliance that is going to be added to us in order to document all of that process is really quite onerous. And inside of your bags, there is a handout. I don't have an example to show you right now, but it's a 2-column piece that talks about some of the changes that will apply to both the advisor and the client. And I would encourage you when you get home to take a look at that. Really, the message is educate yourself. If you're not familiar with the fiduciary ruling, it's something you really should become familiar with because it is coming and it is going live in April of next year. And it is a monumental change in the way that we have to do business. If you'd like an example of some of the complexities that will be involved in implementing this, we've posted a video on our website that when you get a moment and you're sitting around with nothing better to do, let that video run. And the gentleman describes all the infrastructure and things that will have to come into place for us to be able to comply with this ruling. We view this as, while the fiduciary intention is well intended, the implementation of it is almost bordering on the impossible. We view it as an elimination of choice, as government intrusion, as an increasing of regulation and complexity in an industry that is already second only to nuclear power in terms of the regulations that we have to comply with. So in our world, there are really 3 people, or 3 types of people that we identify and work with. And the first is advisor adverse, and that's somebody that really is comfortable doing things on their own. They don't have a need for a professional. They understand this stuff. That's somebody that won't be affected by the fiduciary ruling at all. Another person is someone who is advisor receptive. An advisor receptive is someone, they may be on the fence. They might see some value to working with an advisor or not, and they're going to weigh the cost benefit of that. We think those people can make good decisions, and the ruling will probably affect them a little bit. The person we're concerned about is the person who is advisor dependent. And in that video, it illustrates a person who is truly advisor dependent, as the advisor says, "I'm surprised you've got your pants on correctly," let alone that we understand the rules regarding an IRA plan. So there are people out there that we think would be lost without professional advice, and those are the people that the ruling is designed to benefit, but unfortunately we're finding, and we believe that, those are the folks that will probably be hurt the most. And there is some background on this. Not too long ago, both Britain and Australia implemented a rule that was very similar to the one that's coming out in the United States. So we have some metrics on that. And what we have found is that, as expected, retail banks and investment companies set a minimum requirement of assets to be able to work with a financial professional. And so right away that carves off a strata or a mass market of people that are probably 50 to 75% of the people walking down the street, people just like yourselves and just like the people in this room. So we have a worry there. Many bank advisors left the business. Bank retail advisors are generally commission-oriented advisors. And when the opportunity for them to earn commissions on the things that they did evaporated, they no longer had a source of income. 90% of bank advisors left the business. There's another strata of advisors who simply didn't have enough income to be able to keep up. They left the business. And older senior advisors who didn't want to transition their practice into the new world also left the business. So in Britain, about 30% of the advisors evaporated from the scene. And so that meant that about 30% of the clients also were left high and dry. 69% of advisors said they turned away potential clients because it wouldn't be a good economic fit to work with them. And 43% of advisors said they actually told a client, it's not in your economic best interest for you to have an advisor. It will be too expensive for you to do so. So where are those folks supposed to go? Well, there's a new concept out there called a robo-advisor. And maybe you've seen ads on television for Betterment, or some of the other computer-generated or computer-based financial advisory tools. And for some people, that's a fine option. You plug in information about yourselves, it develops a theoretically, scientifically diversified portfolio for you, or it tells you what your retirement should be and what the retirement projections are, and that's supposed to pick up the slack. And for a lot of people, maybe that's just fine. The problem as I see it is that not one size fits all. And even from the standpoint of if you're entering information into a tool, some of you have this already at work, Fidelity and United Technologies, and they have a tool. You enter in when you'd like to be able to retire and what your interest rates are, and it calculates whether you're on pace or not. The problem is, how do we know whether the assumptions that we are entering are valid? 9 times out of 10, those tools will default to a 4% inflation rate for your expenses. We haven't seen 4% since Jimmy Carter. Although we may again in the future, but we think that 4% is too high and it skews the numbers. So we think that there is a value for having an advisor help you understand what assumptions to plug into these models, and that's why we do these things in-house. And the problem with a robo-advisor is this guy becomes your financial advisor. It's a lot like calling Vanguard, talking to an 800 number and a clerk who doesn't know anything about you. Who do we call when we need help? So if we truly have the savings and investment problem in America that we think that we have, and if things are truly getting more complicated, not less, and if penalties are really as high for getting it wrong as 50%, which is the penalty for getting an RMD calculation wrong, then we think that there is a value for the personal human advisor that can't be understated. I might be a little biased here. But we believe that there's a value to working with a professional advisory team, and that no robo-advisor will ever understand or be able to predict your needs or provide more personal attention than a tightly knit team of smart professionals. Will there be a charge for these sorts of services in the future? Yes. But most of us are already paying that charge. It's just that it's wrapped up inside of the investments that you currently have. One of the big arguments that we see out there for using a robo-advisor versus a paid professional is a 7% rate of return minus expenses equals X. Well, a 7% return minus more expenses because of an advisor equals less than X, right? Well, we buy into that. Okay, that makes sense. And there's a lot of conversation out there that says 75% of the investments out there can't outperform the S&P 500. That's true. But if we apply a simple filter, and that filter is that we work with the largest firms that have the best research departments, all of a sudden that skews the other direction, and we start to see a chart like my friend Will Danoff over at Fidelity. So will there be a charge? Yes, there will. It's currently bundled up inside of your investments in many cases. In the future, it will be separated out and you will see it on your statement instead. So I want to prepare you for that new world and prepare you for a transition that we may have to go through that may cause more fees to appear on your statement. And I want you to understand where that is coming from. It's because we have to unbundle the income that we currently earn from investment companies directly and put it on your statement. That might even jeopardize this event. As you probably know, we have a number of investment sponsors and partners that help us fund this event. That could be considered a conflict of interest. It's a brave new world. And you know the crazy thing? We don't even know if it's going to happen in January. It might get repealed along with Obamacare, depending on who gets into office. So far, all the Republicans and some Democrats have voted against this ruling. Obama is expected to veto, and not enough votes likely exist to overturn a presidential veto. If it is implemented, if it goes through, our office is going to start to look a lot like an attorney's office, where we're paying for projects or we have an hourly rate with asset management fees coupled in with that as well. If a Republican is elected president, the regulations will likely be repealed. So there's been a total of 9 lawsuits that have been filed against this ruling already. President Obama has already renewed his commitment to veto. So we're concerned about government intrusion. We're concerned about loss of choice. We're concerned about, yet again, even more regulation in this industry. But we'll just have to see how it plays out. Folks, I'm going to encourage you to educate yourself about this rule. It's the Department of Labor fiduciary ruling. Look it up on YouTube, Google it. You'll find plenty of things to read. So let's carry on. So Brexit, we think, is a shot across the bow. We think that there is a lot of risk out there. There's a lot of torpedoes in the water, and it's a warning shot about the fragility of the market that we exist in. We saw that the FTSE dropped pretty sharply, that the pound dropped about 30%. But do we think it's a problem in the long run? Probably not, because Britain is a huge trading partner with the European Union that we simply can't afford to let go. So we think that sometimes if you shake a few trees and a few things fall out, maybe that's okay. And maybe it creates opportunities for us to revise some of our agreements or to do things differently than we have in the past. And that in itself generates opportunity. Contagion is a risk. That suddenly the Poles decide to exit, or Germany decides to exit, or Texas decides to exit. We think it's probably going to work out okay. And this is going to be something that rolls out in slow motion over 2 years, but it does give me kind of the message of the evening, which is watch out for torpedoes. And torpedoes are events that can shoot a hole in our portfolio or the market and cause things to take a dive. You know, we look at a slide like this, and I say, okay, I get it. And yes, the FTSE did drop very sharply, but it actually came rallying right back. Here's Brexit. And here we are back out the other side. Guys, there's a lot of torpedoes in the water. Did anybody hear what happened in Turkey today? That's bad news. For those of you who haven't heard, there's a military coup going on in Turkey taking over the government. They don't even know who's in charge in Turkey right now. What would that do to the market? What does the situation in Nice, France do? You know, there's a lot. Can we agree the world is a mess? Okay. And so my concern is, in fact, one of the partners that we work with, a very smart money manager, an analyst that we have a lot of faith in, has pulled out his slide rule and does his math and came to the conclusion that we are in for a 25% correction in the market within the next 6 months. Do I believe that? I don't know if I can go that far. But the fact that some smart guy, his computers and calculations says that's a possibility, I think just reinforces some of the things that we all are thinking about right now. So let's talk about trimming the sails. At every one of these presentations, I like to do a brief market outlook, and we may want to fine-tune our portfolios as a result of that. So here's kind of the message. And if you attended the program last year, this message is very similar from last year. There's not much change with the exception of the election. We know that's going to create a ton of volatility. It's a ton of uncertainty. Maybe some of that volatility is buying opportunities. We do think that volatility remains the theme and that returns are likely to be modest. If I can get low single digits this year, I'm going to feel like an absolute superstar. If I can get high single digits, I mean, I'm moving to Europe. It's out of control. So I want to temper our expectations about what we want to expect going forward. And there's some economic slides I'm going to share with you here. This is where we get into the mathy part. This is our unemployment numbers. And yeah, unemployment is down. Yay, but relative to what? Relative to 2008? Sure, but the trend line from 98 and earlier is not very good. It actually is unemployment is rising over a period of time. How about consumer spending? Yeah, looking good. Okay, again, relative to what? It is increasing, a little fall off here, but the trend line is not exactly what I would like to favorably see. Inflation is low, good news. But there's this little uptick that's coming along, and that's starting to be what we call wage pressures. And that's where salaries are being pushed up because people can demand more salaries or leave their job, and employers are being forced to pay that to keep talent. And so that's the kind of stuff that drives real inflation. We think inflation numbers are going up. And frankly, there's not a lot of commitment to the market to begin with. Money in 2015 has been flowing out of equities and into bonds, and that's been a trend for a while. Even though, as we know, when interest rates go up, bonds go down, it just seems like any thought of interest rate increase has been wiped off the board now. And so people are fleeing to safety. And why? Because the world is a mess. And not only that, the economy growth is just slowing to a crawl. So we think that there are a lot of torpedoes on the water, and risk remains a theme. Now, as you may know, we had our market risk conference call series not too long ago. Those have been recorded and posted on our website. You can download the thing like a podcast, or you can download the slides, or both, and we really would encourage you to do that. If you don't have time to listen to all of them, that's okay. You don't have to listen to even all of any single one of them. But I would encourage you to flip through it. Our website is mobile friendly, so you can plug it in the car and just listen a little bit as you're driving around like a podcast. And I think you'll get the message that we are still concerned about risk. So what do? Well, we think we want to stay the course. And as strange as that might seem, it's because that we've already positioned most of our clients for this kind of an environment. We've already deployed risk management strategies and safety valves and things that will help us. So most portfolios are already protected to some degree. The one thing I want to put out there, 401ks are really not on our radar because it's not an account that we hold and that we observe. So your 401ks at work are something you'll have to pay attention to. This may not be appropriate for everyone. Please consult with your advisor, of course, but we are thinking that for a moderately aggressive investor, having up to half of your 401k in stable value might not be so bad. Just so we can kind of weather and see what's going on out there. So this is our thought. We do think that there are some opportunities out there. Healthcare still looks really good. Some of the research departments that we work with tell us that biotechnology is going to be an absolute rocket ship for the next 10 to 15 years. Technology in general is fascinating. We've got cars that drive themselves, sort of. We have drones and probably cold fusion, and we're all going to Mars is coming around the corner soon. So very exciting times. And always the defensive consumer staples and discretionary, which is things that you can eat, drink, smoke, or use in the bathroom. Those are things that tend to be fairly stable in questionable economic times. So let's talk about the weather report. And if you've seen these presentations before, you know that when we say weather report, it means the economic climate and what we're predicting, as opposed to this weather report. How many people know who this is? Woo! Jaco Pastorius, greatest bass player ever to walk the planet. Craig can tell you. So at any rate, this is the Dow since 1997. And yeah, we're hitting all-time highs. We hit an all-time high on Thursday, and we might have actually hit today. I think we ended up 10 points, so that's probably another record. I'm unimpressed. We hit a high right back there, too. And I'm not saying that we're due for a correction any second now, but I am saying there's a lot of torpedoes in the water. And I think that any one of them could cause a very precarious financial and economic situation that we have to kind of go the wrong direction. So remember, folks, there's two ways that the market can correct. And our mantra right now is flat is the new up. I'm happy with flat. There's two ways it can correct. Number one is the big dramatic drops like we had back in 2008. But the other is the market bores us to death for a bunch of years and just goes sideways and trades in a range. Looks something like this. And we saw that happen. There's actually a name for it. It's called the lost decade, where the markets essentially went nowhere. So we're more concerned with protecting money rather than making money. And there's a lot of tools that are designed to work in that environment. They will go up when the market does, but they're engineered not to take big losses on the downside. The Swan Defined Risk Strategy is one of them. And the gentleman from Swan is here tonight. His name is John. I'd encourage you to seek him out. In fact, as you noticed when we came in, we have a lot of our investment sponsors and supporters out there. Seek them out. A lot of the ideas that we talk about tonight are represented in the investments that they offer. Talk with them. Learn what they do. We've invited them to come here for a reason. And we think they have some compelling offerings. So I'm going to wind up here and bring up our guest speaker in just a moment here. Before I do, I have one quick disclosure to share with you, and that as much as we think the Blavatnik Foundation is a fantastic organization, they are not one of our sponsors. And if you look onto our blue bags here, you'll see that the Blavatnik Foundation ended up on top of the Fidelity logo. So if there are any Fidelity reps out there, I profusely apologize. I want to take a moment also to thank our staff. Is Catherine, Emily, and Amanda out here somewhere? Folks, these are the guys that make it happen every single day. These are the girls. They are the heart and soul and factory of our office, and they are simply in the department that we could not do this without them. So this party is theirs more so than mine and ours, so they do a fantastic job, and thank you. I'd also like to have James Evans and Philip Valark stand up. Where's James and Phil? There's Phil. And James is over to my left. James is an assistant with Craig, and Philip is our summer intern working on the trading desk. They've been instrumental in helping us out this year, so thank you guys for coming out. Finally, I'd like to recognize the newest advisor on our team is Mr. Tim Miller out here somewhere. Where is he at? There he is, okay. Where is he? There he is. Tim joins us from Pepperidge Farms. He had a long career there as a marketing representative, and this will be a second career for him. Tim is a resident of the Newtown Sandy Hook area. He's been a client for probably a decade now, and he's actually the first step in opening an office in the Newtown Sandy Hook area. So thank you, Tim, for joining us. Looking forward to working with you. Thank you. And finally, before I sign off and hand over the microphone, I'd like to just thank you, as always, for your business and for your continued confidence in what it is that we do. Thank you very much for your support. Thank you.